Hi, I'm Debbie with Debbie's Book Vlog. I am so thrilled that you had a chance to stop by and see my video this week. There are so many wonderful new release books that have just come out that I want to focus this week on new release books and some authors who have their first debut book that is out here for all of us to read. So why don't you grab a seat, push the like button and the subscription button, and why don't we get started with the first new release that I have to talk about this particular week. The first book is going to be from Oprah's book club. It's her feature book from the month of October, The Underground Railroad, and we're going to go on site to the Barnard House here in southeastern Pennsylvania, which was a key location for the Underground Railroad. Well, let's head on out there and get a start this week. Hi, I'm Debbie, and welcome to Debbie's Book Vlog. I'm glad you had a chance to join with me this week, and I'd like to start out with a little bit of history here in the local area. I'm here at the Barnard House in Chester County in Pennsylvania, and this is where one of the key station masters used to be for the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad operated in its height from 1830 to 1860, and it operated kind of like a spoke pattern here in southeast Pennsylvania. Chester County was one of the first states that fugitive slaves would come into as they crossed through Delaware and Maryland, which were slave states, as they tried to reach their freedom north of the Mason-Dixon line. There's about 36 locations here in an 8-mile radius of Kennett Square, so this was a really prime and key area where the Underground Railroad operated. Well, that brings me into the first book that I'd like to talk about this month, and that's The Underground Railroad. This book is a feature selection for Oprah Winfrey here in October, and I definitely give this a 5-star rating, and I think it's going to be a great book club selection here for everyone coming up here in the fall and over the winter. It talks greatly about the Freedom Highway and basically the hard time and the hellish time that some of these slaves had on some of these plantations and what they had to go through in order to seek their freedom through the Underground Railroad. The book focuses on a slave named Cora. She's a young woman who lives on a cotton plantation in Georgia, and she has an extremely difficult life, and she's ready to come into her womanhood. Well, we all know what's going to start happening to her at that point in time in her life, and it isn't going to be wonderful. So a new slave comes to the plantation. His name is Caesar, and he tells her about the Underground Railroad. And together they both decide that they're going to try and seek their freedom and escape from the plantation and the poor life that they have there on that farm. So the story focuses on the situations that they run into on the Underground Railroad, the help they receive from the conductors and the station masters through South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Indiana, and into the north. And I have to tell you, the Whitehead does an absolutely wonderful job, brilliant job, recreating what the lives of these slaves were like and what these black people had to go through pre-Civil War. Great book, wonderfully written, and I highly recommend this for the book clubs out there this fall. The Pond by Claire Louise Bennett are short essays connected by rambling thoughts. And quite frankly, if there was a focus at all, it's the occurrence of everyday life. There's a woman who lives on the outskirts of a coastal village, and this book isn't written in the narrative, but it gives intimate detail about her life, sacred thoughts that she puts down on paper before they disappear. You quite frankly might see in your own longings and desires something within her ramblings. And even though this book is really kind of a short book, I found that because of the ramblings and the lack of focus and more the essay way she's written this book, it was really kind of hard for me to get into it. Mercury is a story about middle-aged passion. Now we all think of men who have their middle-of-the-life flings with their girls 20 or 30 years younger than them. Perhaps it's buying a fast car or a motorcycle. But in this particular case, it's Vivian who takes an obsession with a horse called Mercury. Donald knows all there is about seeing because he's an optometrist in suburban Boston. He's sure he knows all about his wife who runs the local stables. and they both are all devoted to their 2 children. Well, then Mercury arrives, and he's owned by Hillary. And Vivian decides again that she wants to compete, and she becomes obsessed with owning Mercury and competing. Donald, with his 20/20 vision, can't see what's right in front of his face. He has no time to talk and no time to listen to 2 points of view. Well, does that sound familiar or what? This book is about infidelity and betrayal, and the book focuses on the difference between lies and withholding information. The Lost Girls is a debut novel by Miss Young, and she examines the price of loyalty, the burden of regret, the memory of salvation, and the sacrifice we all make for love. It's told through the viewpoints of 2 women, and it talks about a family mystery which keeps them at a lake home for all of their lives. It starts with a 6-year-old girl, Emily, who suddenly disappears, and the mother spends the rest of her life at the lake home hoping that someday Emily will return. 60 years later, Lucy at the lake home decides to put her thoughts and memories down on paper, and she provides a written summary of the devastation that happened that day that Emily disappeared.